Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, a lot to talk about today, but no question about it. One of the biggest developments over the weekend, especially the last 72 hours, is now people are beginning to digest what took place in Beijing at that historic summit meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping, the Chinese strongman. And many, especially in Trump's base, the Make America Great Again movement that catapulted him to power, many now are in open revolt against two concessions that President Trump made to Xi, and they want him to reverse course. And as you know, a big objective of Trump's mission to the summit, the purpose of the trip, among others, there was multiple things he wanted to accomplish. But one of the big ones was he wanted to get American companies to have access to the Chinese market, and he wanted China to start buying U.S. products. This was key to create jobs here at home, to help bolster our farmers in particular. He wants China to buy American oil and wean itself off Iranian oil. This way they'll become more dependent upon us. It will strengthen our leverage vis-a-vis China. And of course, the Chinese market for so long has been closed to our businesses, our companies, our entrepreneurs. But the Chinese have had unfettered access until Trump to our market. Well, in essence, to simplify things a little bit, what the Chinese agreed to, what Xi in particular agreed to, was a massive order of air passenger planes. In particular, 200 Boeing 737s. So China will buy about 200 American planes. This is a big investment. A lot of jobs here in the United States. They will also now start to buy American oil. They're going to send their oil tankers to Texas, to Alaska, and get their oil and bring it back to China. Again, this is good for our oil industry. It's going to help with jobs, obviously, and it's going to make China, as I said, more dependent upon our oil, which gives us leverage over them. And then our agricultural products, soybeans in particular. Trump got the Chinese to agree to open up their market and to start buying a lot of our agricultural products, soybeans, agricultural goods, which is a big win for our farmers. So, on that level, there's no question Trump delivered, and these are significant economic achievements. There's no question. However, did he give away too much in return? That is now the question. On the first point, President Trump has now reversed himself. As you know, he campaigned that he would not allow Chinese students to any longer come into the United States and go to our colleges and universities. And now he has reversed course. In 2024, 2025, there were about 265,000 Chinese students who attend either universities or colleges in America. Now Trump wants to almost double that. He wants over 500,000 visas to be granted to Chinese students. And these students, just to be clear, overwhelmingly are children of Chinese Communist Party officials. They are the wealthy, privileged children of the CCP, of the leadership in Beijing. They're basically, to put it, in a common phrase of the 60s and 70s, they're red diaper babies. They were born into the communist elite, and they come to the United States. As I said in my X post, many of them spy for China, and they have been doing this for years. They come to steal our technology or engage in intellectual property theft, to steal our research and development, and to learn our ways so they can replicate it back home when they're done here. In other words, we are educating our enemies. And that's why Trump initially ran against it. I completely agreed with him. And now President Trump has decided to change course and increase the amount of visas that will now be granted to Chinese students. It's going to be 500, in fact, almost nearly 600,000 visas. President Trump says it would be an insult to the communist Chinese if we said we will not allow your students to come into our country, and that Xi said it is a matter of national honor, of national pride, of saving face, that these students must be allowed to come and study at some of our most elite, prestigious universities. President Trump, several times now, not once, not twice, on multiple occasions, in interview after interview, says we are going to grant over 500,000 visas to Chinese students, and I think he wants to do this now on a yearly basis. Furthermore, he has now also agreed, even though Republicans now are close to securing the votes, to prevent Chinese businessmen, people connected to the CCP, Chinese companies, Chinese agribusinesses from purchasing U.S. farmland. There is now a bill the Republicans are on the verge of voting on, which would ban China or people tied to the Chinese Communist Party from purchasing precious large tracts of farmland, and especially near sensitive military installations. President Trump has reversed that, saying he wants Republicans to not push the bill. If they pass it, he will not sign it. And in an interview with Sean Hannity on Fox, which he repeated in several other places as well, he says that he will allow or continue to allow Chinese businesses and companies to purchase farmland in the United States. He says without the farmland being bought up, the value of the land is going to plummet. It is going to kill farmers who won't be able to sell their farms, or if they do, it's going to be at bottom prices. And so, to prop up the farm market, he says, I have no choice but to continue to allow Chinese businesses, Chinese owners, Chinese-linked firms to buy up our farmland all across the United States, including close to military installations. Listen now to President Trump. He was being interviewed on Fox News, and he said, look, we solved a lot of issues, and I got some concrete wins for the United States. They're going to buy a lot of our planes, and they're going to start buying our soybeans from our farmers. Roll cut one, Mike.
We've solved a lot of problems over the years. We have a very good relationship. Trade has been very strong. We're getting a lot of soybeans for our farmers. We're doing a lot of, there's a lot of things happening for the farmers. He committed to 200 Boeings, big ones, 777s and 737s, and a lot of big ones, big, beautiful Boeing planes, 200, that's a lot.
So he's saying, look, the Chinese are spending a lot of money. These are massive investments. So we got a lot. But they also had demands. And listen now to President Trump. On the Chinese students, he said, I'm sorry, I'm going to grant those visas because this is an insult to communist China, and in particular, an insult to Xi Jinping and the leadership of the CCP. Roll cut 2A, Mike. All right, we don't have, okay. So I'll tell you what, we're going to play it on the other side. I want you to hear it. Mike says we don't have enough time. Look, let me just say this. I think granting the 500,000 visas is a huge mistake. As I said on X, I love Trump. I agree with him on over 95% of the issues. But on this one, I strongly disagree. You allow that many Chinese students to come into our university system. They are going to spy. They are going to steal our technology and research and development. Okay, I want to ask all of you, did Trump give away too much in his trip to China? And in particular, should we allow 500,000 to 600,000 Chinese students to be given visas to come and attend our universities and colleges? Listen now to President Trump telling Sean Hannity on Fox, look, it's insulting to the Chinese. It's insulting to Xi Jinping. I'm not going to insult them. And plus, he says we need those 500,000 students because our university system would essentially collapse without them. Roll cut 2A, Mike.
As far as the students, it's 500,000 students that come, good students. I could tell them, I don't want any students, is a very insulting thing to say to a country. If you want to see a university system die, take 500,000 people out of it. And you know, the ones that won't be hurt are the top schools. The top schools will do fine, but your lower schools, the ones that don't do quite as well, those two, they'll be dying all over the place. I frankly think that it's good that people come from other countries and they learn our culture, and many of them want to stay here. I think it's good. Not everybody agrees with me.
Well, I don't. So, I mean, I'm going to be honest. In fact, I strongly disagree with the president on this one. Look, and I'll tell you why. Number one, there are many reasons, but the biggest one, you know, these aren't liberty-loving students that we're bringing in from, you know, poor farms or areas of China. These are the children of China's elite. And China's elite is dominated completely by the Communist Party, the CCP. So what we're doing is we are educating our enemies. Why would we want to do that? Literally, why would we want to do that? Okay, that to me is point number one. Point number two, and I could cite you, we've discussed it on this show many times. I could cite you example after example after example of how many times Chinese students, either undergraduate or graduate or postgraduate, who work in some of our most elite universities or study at our most elite universities, have been caught stealing our research and development. Or if they stay and get jobs in companies, they then engage in intellectual property theft. And they steal our technology and send it back to China. So we have been economically arming China, enriching China, and they make no bones about it. The Chinese regime has said over and over and over, they want to overtake and eclipse the United States as the world's dominant superpower. In other words, they're out to defeat us in a Cold War. They believe they can win where the Soviet Union lost. Now, when we had a Cold War with the Soviets, we weren't allowing Russian students to come to our prestigious universities. We never gave them access to our most sensitive technology or research and development, or allow them to steal our most intellectual property, our intellectual property rights. We'd be insane. And as for this, and Trump has said this now a couple times, well, many universities rely on these Chinese students because they pay top freight. They pay, $100 or even $150,000 to study, as opposed to say 50 or 60 from American students. There are basically 19 to 20 million college students in the United States. I don't think blocking 500,000 is going to bankrupt our college system, our collegiate system. It's a proverbial drop in the bucket. 500,000 is not going to bankrupt 20 million. I'm sorry, it's just not. Maybe some of these lower end colleges will take a hit, okay? But there are many Americans who want to go to these colleges, and these Chinese students are going to be taking their place and displacing and dislodging them. How come nobody speaks for all these Americans now that maybe want to go to some of these good schools, but the Chinese student pays more because they pay a foreign rate instead of a domestic rate, and so they come in and get a slot that is denied to an American student? And then on top of that, you've got widespread espionage. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party has let it be known. Their goal is to infiltrate every institution in American society. Our universities and colleges, our big companies, corporate America, the media, Capitol Hill, Congress, you name it. And then, and Trump is right. Look, I don't mind foreign students coming. I think it's good for them to absorb our culture and absorb our values. But we're not talking about Albania. We're not talking about Japan. We're not talking about Sweden. We're not talking about students from Thailand or Vietnam. I'm talking about from our number one mortal adversary and enemy. Okay, I want to ask you, do you agree with President Trump's decision to grant at least, it's going to be closer to 600,000 when everything is said and done, but basically over 500,000 visas to Chinese students so they can come and study at our universities and colleges? Now, I want to play the cut one more time, because Trump has said this now in multiple interviews, that the Chinese leadership and they've been lobbying for this for years now, were deeply offended when he campaigned on preventing Chinese students from being able to study at our elite universities. That they said this was deeply offensive and insulting, and it was a point of honor for them that Trump had to reverse himself. Listen now to Trump. Roll cut 2A, Mike.
As far as the students, it's 500,000 students they come, good students. I could tell them, I don't want any students, is a very insulting thing to say to a country. If you want to see a university system die, take 500,000 people out of it. And the ones that won't be hurt are the top schools. The top schools will do fine, but your lower schools, the ones that don't do quite as well, they'll be dying all over the place. I frankly think that it's good that people come from other countries and they learn our culture, and many of them want to stay here. I think it's good. Not everybody agrees with me.
Okay. Now, just by the way, Chinese students almost overwhelmingly go to our top elite prestigious universities. They don't go to the middle rank or lower tier universities. So the fact that the lower universities are going to be hurt, I'm sorry, I don't see it. I mean, I don't see it. I don't want to repeat my argument about 19 to 20 million college students. So you deny 500,000. Okay. It's not the end of the world. Far from it. But this to me is the bigger point. He says, well, it's very insulting to the Chinese. Well, someone needs to ask Xi Jinping, because this is deeply insulting to me. When you unleashed a biological weapon out of the lab in Wuhan that killed over 1 million of my fellow citizens, and over 1 million Americans, and millions more around the world, that was deeply insulting. When you lied about it to our face, that was deeply insulting. When you did it to specifically politically cripple Trump so you can help Joe Biden and the Democrats steal the 2020 election, that to me was deeply insulting. So I'm sorry, but Xi Jinping, as I said on Friday, and I'm going to repeat it again, because facts are facts are facts. The truth is the truth is the truth. Xi Jinping is a mass murderer. He is a mass murderer who murdered, and I'm not just talking his own citizens, I'm talking about Americans. And by the way, no man in history has killed more Americans than Xi Jinping. Even Hitler did not kill as many Americans as Xi Jinping. No foreign country has been able to kill over 1 million Americans. That was done at the hands of Communist China, led by Xi Jinping. Now, did Fauci, and to me, people like him that should be tried for crimes against humanity, did U.S. officials collaborate and fund and help provide research for the gain of function that they were doing in those, in those sinister labs in Wuhan? Yes, no question. Some American officials bear tremendous responsibility. Okay? But ultimately, it was Xi that made the decision. To do the biological weapons research, and then when they had a leak, to deliberately release infected people to come here to infect us. Now, Trump, I remember clearly, I can play you the cuts. I mean, it would take me 4 hours if you want to play all the cuts. Rightly hammered Biden and Kamala, hammered them, saying how weak they were towards China, how weak they were towards Xi Jinping on the issue of COVID-19. That China owed us an apology, that China owed us reparations, that China needed to be held accountable for what they did to us. And now, all of a sudden, Xi's feelings are going to get hurt? The Chinese are going to be insulted? The communist Chinese? What I mean by that, the CCP leadership? I don't care. Who cares? You guys should have thought of that before you launched a biological attack on this country. We don't owe the communist Chinese anything. Never mind, I mean, our universities, for all of their flaws, the woke ideology, the anti-Americanism, the cultural Marxism, I could go on. For all of their flaws, some of the best healthcare clinics, hospitals are tied to our universities. Some of our best scientific research, computer research, big technology is tied to our universities. That's a gold mine for the communist Chinese. And what? We're just going to sell ourselves because they're going to pay $100,000 or $150,000 tuition and come on in, and we're going to give them access to everything? When President Trump, and again, I supported him on this, when he banned specific countries, forget coming to our universities to study, but when he banned, 8, 9 countries, and said, you can't come to America, period. It was an immigration ban, period. You can't come to vacation. You can't come to study. You can't come to work. You just can't come. Because most of them either had ties to terrorism, they were sponsors of terrorism, or they were Islamist hotbeds. Who cares if they were offended? get your country in order, stop spreading jihadism or terrorism, and then you'll be off the terrorist list. It's that simple. And the immigration ban list. It's really that easy. So stop trying to steal everything that we make. And by the way, students, especially graduate students, have been caught smuggling dangerous viruses and pathogens developed here in this country out into China, back to China. Has COVID taught us nothing? So, no, it's not worth 200 planes. I'm sorry. I want jobs. I want to see Americans working. I want to see everything being reshored here, manufacturing, but not at this cost. Well, they're buying our oil. The world is buying our oil. Again, we don't need China to buy our oil. Well, they're going to sell soybeans. Well, they're going to buy our soybeans. Well, you know what? I'd rather literally subsidize the soybean farmers. If that's what it means, if that's the price, it's okay. It's not worth it. To me, the price is too high. And on a last point, and then I just want to go right back. I want to start to go to the phone lines. We've got to stop this mentality that China is a partner, like a business partner or a friend or someone we can do business with, or we have to get along with them. I'm not saying we start a war, obviously, but it's time we recognize the threat for what it is. And COVID-19 should have ended this delusion that you can be a partner or collaborate or cooperate with China. Now, here to me is the test. Okay? Here to me is the ultimate test. If Xi Jinping is the friend that he says he is to President Trump, as I speak to you now, the overwhelming bulk of Iran's oil used to be sold to China until the blockade, the U.S. imposed blockade. Almost all of Iran's oil went to China. Almost all of Iran's exports, petrochemical, steel, you name it, it all goes to China. China could cut Iran off at the knees. I mean, economically cripple them with one phone call. Okay, should we be granting 500,000 to 600,000 visas to Chinese students to attend our universities and colleges? President Trump says yes. It would be insulting to the Chinese if we didn't, to the government, to the regime, and that our university system needs those 500,000 students. I say I disagree with Trump on this. I say we shouldn't give out a single student visa, and our university system would still survive, no problemo. But that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. This is from 617. By the way, you can text the Kuhner man, 70470. And I think 617 hits the nail right on the head. Jeff, if a Democrat, I don't know, let's say Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, came out and made this deal, Republicans would be screaming, traitor, he got paid off. Trump is wrong, plain and simple on this one. China won. They got the better end of the deal. So, look, I don't know about the last part. We'll wait and see, obviously, how much more economic concessions we get from China. But the first part, you're absolutely dead on, 617. Let's be honest. If Biden allowed visas to 600,000 Chinese students, or Kamala, we would be screaming traitor. I mean, we would be screaming to the moon. And that's why Trump now has a huge backlash from his supporters. MAGA is not happy with this decision. Are you? 266-6868. Arthur in Chestnut Hill. Thanks for holding, Arthur, and welcome.
He sold us out, Jeff. That BS about the students was so bad. He kept stumbling and he couldn't keep it straight. They're fumbling over what he was saying. It is the biggest nonsense I ever heard. He went to China with his hat in his hand and he left his hat there. He couldn't even get a 78-year-old dying man out of jail freed. I mean, that's how disgusting it was. And to put the word "on" next to Xi Jinping's name is completely irresponsible and unbelievable. I've never seen such a sellout of this country, and I don't know where we ever decided to stop fighting communism, which was the end of the world, because look what it's done to us. And that other stupid statement by saying it's okay to sell military land all around our military bases. I mean, the nonsense that came out of his mouth and this trip, and what I was watching was Xi Jinping, okay, turning around and throwing how great China looked and all its pomp and circumstance and success, and then saying, "You did this for us, stupid." You know, the last when Nixon came to China, they were wearing pajamas and a hat with a red star on it. This guy is the most evil guy. He's worse than Mao. It's just because he looks like your grandfather with a nice smile and he wears a suit that people think he's innocent. But this man is the most evil person there is, and what they've done to this country is unbelievable. Look what they've done. They've sent us contaminated baby food, dog food, lumber. Everything they've sent us has been worthless, and they want to send our students here. They've had such a spy network in this country, and I remember when we used to, the FBI used to go after spies. Now they go after Americans, of course. But I am disgusted. And as far as COVID, a little personal story, if you wouldn't mind. A friend of mine came to visit me yesterday, who I haven't seen in many years, who ran this fabulous daycare. And I said, "How's that going?" He says, "Well, COVID shut it down, and I've never been able to recover from it." Well, I'll tell you something about COVID and what they did. You talk about the lives they've cost. I'm a personal victim. They bankrupted me, Jeff, okay? They destroyed my business that I built from nothing for 30 years, and the good of that was I was able to turn around, and every year I give to all the charities gladly to pay back for all the people who helped me. They've taken this government and China and COVID and what they did to me, and I'm not the only one. They destroyed my life. I never want. I wanted to keep it, but now after that trip, I felt I have to say something. And look what's happened in this country since COVID. By the way, prices on everything have tripled, especially in this state. The economy is a joke. Gas is a joke. And now it looks like Trump's foreign policy is a joke. He went from unconditional surrender in Iran to Iran any condition that you want, and he's going to betray 40,000 people whom they murdered. I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what are we going to do about it. If he has capitulated to the Chinese, to the communists, which you've done for a lot of, where are we going from there?
Arthur, I'm just curious, why do you think he made this deal?
Boy, it sure sounds like somebody had something on him. I mean, that didn't sound like an American president going over there. There's not one thing that we got soybeans. Oh my God, we're going to get. It's okay for them to get that land. We can't develop land in this country, especially him. Well, that whole thing was a total joke and embarrassment. And he's got the gall to come back and say what a success it was. He should be ashamed of himself. I don't know how can he look at himself in the mirror for what he did to the people of this country. I'm not the only. There were plenty more victims like me all over the place.
Oh, I know.
But that story
Arthur,
doesn't get out.
Millions, literally millions of business owners like you got wiped out and destroyed by COVID. the lockdowns and what China unleashed, and of course what they did, what Fauci and his minions did, and then obviously Charlie Baker, then the governor, they destroyed business people like you, people who spent, you're talking about blood, sweat, tears, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of their lives building up these businesses, and it just got destroyed, just wiped out. And by the way, you're absolutely right. We've never economically recovered from COVID. The inflation exploded under COVID. You're completely right. The economy became really bad under COVID. Gas exploded under COVID. Energy under COVID. I can almost all of our problems, I could tie it back to China and COVID. So you're completely right. It was a biological attack, not just to destroy Trump politically, but to kill countless Americans, wreck our economy, which it did, and bring us to our knees. And by the way, you're right. That beautiful hall where everybody was toasting and drinking champagne and eating, that was all paid for by us. That's the trillions and trillions of dollars that the communist Chinese have stolen from our country. All the jobs we sent there, all the investment, all the research and development, all the intellectual property, all the technology they stole from us and they were spying and stealing, that was all outsourced to them. So we transferred trillions of our wealth, and look at them now. They're now basically on a par with us. I'm sorry. The truth is the truth. And, one of the things I think was great about Trump is that he put tariffs on the Chinese. 100% pretty much across the board. And so I thought he was going to go there and drive a really hard bargain. But when I saw this, and then the farmland, I'm like, well, dude, what happened? What happened? My suspicion is this, and Arthur, you may agree or disagree. I think he needs China more than he's willing to admit to end the war in Iran. I think he wants to get out. He wants to get out before the midterms. He needs help on reopening the strait and getting the nuclear enrichment stockpile out. And China is their biggest buyer. Iran's economy is completely dependent on China. If China wanted to turn off the lights, they could turn off the lights. They could really just economically just cut their throat. So they have tremendous leverage over the mullahs. The only country economic leverage. The only country that has real economic leverage is China. And so I think Trump had to make a deal to get the Chinese on board. And now the question is, will China deliver? Or will they do what they always do? Pocket the win and then screw us. That's what they do. They take and take and take and give either nothing or the minimum in return. So, Arthur, we shall see. But I think that was the deal. Arthur, thank you so much for that call. I really appreciate it. You give us what we want on farmland, on Chinese students, on other issues, maybe now even the arms sale to Taiwan, $12 billion, that's been put on hold. Trump says he's not sure whether he'll send it or not send it. So I think they said, give us this, and we'll make a deal and help you get out of this thing with Iran as quickly as possible and reopen the strait, and you declare victory. So, we'll see. But I doubt China's even going to deliver on the Iran front, because they never deliver. Kevin in Andover. Thanks for holding, Kevin, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure, Kevin.
Yeah, so I live in Andover, downtown Andover. So if you go to Phillips Andover, the prep school, I believe it's got to be the top 5 in the world, I believe, still ranked. It is. So they just built the Pan Center, which it's all CCP money. And then they built another huge building. So the Pan Center it's prevalent. When you're going up to the dentist, you can drive by it and see it. It's It's beautiful. Now, there are probably 3, maybe 4 mansions right down the street that are owned by the CCP, by the communists, from China. And so all the kids go to Phillips Andover. And my point is, and then they seed it. That's their, the parents stay there. It is almost their little private resort when they're visiting the kids. The kids have to stay on campus. But it's probably, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 85% China, Chinese kids that are there. So, and if you look at probably the other elite prep schools around our country, the 500,000 number that he's coming up with, it's probably just the kids leaving those prep schools going on to our elite universities, Harvard or MIT or whatever they are. But they've already seeded. And then if you go, to Woburn on Washington Street, no one probably knows, unless you live in this particular part of the state of Massachusetts. Those labs are 100%. They have a bunch of biotech labs. They're 100% owned by China, and it's in Cummings Park on Washington Street. And so, and I'm very, very familiar with it because I have clients, that I serve that are all Chinese. That it's literally, you think like you're in Little China. So the biotech, and then Cambridge is very, very similar, just not as prevalent, but they're seated already in our country. So it's already, I don't want to say done, and I don't agree with Trump at all, on this, but I think what he probably is saying is that, okay, where do these kids go to universities after they graduate from, I'm using Phillips Andover as an example. Where do they go? They go to the elite, our Ivies. They go to our high universities, or our best universities. So, which do they need the money? Not necessarily, but so these buildings that they're building, and Phillips Andover campuses, they're over $1 billion a pop. So, and they're named after Chinese CCP, donors. So it's not. I don't know. I think we're already pregnant, if you will. So I don't know if he can, roll back the die. And I don't know how you control private elite prep schools. And that's what they are. I'm not sure that he has an ability to do that unless he does something like what he did with Harvard or Columbia, on the Jewish front. But I don't know. I mean, I think they're already here. So
they're definitely already here. Oh, Kevin, look, by the way, fascinating call. Look, they're already here. And they've been here now for 20 to 30 years. And it's a concerted plan. And you laid it out. By the way, because my wife does some real estate. She's a real estate agent on the side. And she says the biggest clients, it's not even close, are CCP Chinese, Chinese tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And they're buying up the most lucrative property in Boston, Greater Boston. Grace is amazed at how much money they have. She says, you're right. I mean, money is no object. And you ask them, well, why are you buying up this, why do you want to buy this townhouse? Why do you want to buy this home? Why do you want to buy an apartment building? The whole damn thing. They're like, oh, I got a kid or two at Harvard. Oh, they need a place to stay. Or they're going to MIT or whatever. So they're putting their kids through our universities, and they're also buying up valuable real estate. And then I want to go back to an earlier point you made. Look, it's no accident. They go to Harvard has some very vitally important biolabs. That's where the Chinese students are. MIT, ditto. Now, I'm getting out of Massachusetts now. There's a reason why there are so many Chinese students in Michigan, University of Michigan. Michigan has one of the most prestigious biological programs, biolab programs in the world. And they're there. California, Berkeley, they're there. So it's not an accident. This is deliberate. So they send them into our elite high schools, prep schools, private schools, and they have them stay here, and then they have them go on to university. And many of them see themselves, they're staunchly nationalistic. They're very pro-China because their parents are integral part of the regime. So this is what I mean. They're not like students from France, or Japan or South Korea or, many of them are like, wow, I love going to college in America. It's just, I learn things. There's a party culture, whatever. I go out and see the town. Oh, America is great. No, they're not here to, absorb the sights and appreciate the country. Hey, look, I was a foreign student. I came from Canada. I did my PhD work at Ohio University. I loved it. I'm telling you, Ohio University in Athens, Ohio is one of the most beautiful campuses you can ever go to. I loved my professors. I loved the program I was in. I loved the campus. Honestly, I loved the cafeteria. I thought the cafeteria food was amazing. I mean, it was one of the best experiences of my life. So I get where Trump, in one sense, is coming from. I came here and I'm like, wow, man, do I love America. And there were other foreign students, and they felt the exact same way. But that's not the CCP students. That's a different kettle of fish. It's like when they send them in from Qatar or, from some of these Islamist countries. No. They're there to cause trouble on the campuses. They're there to spread anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism. Whoa, not all students are equal. And look, we can either just capitulate or we can begin to recognize the program and start rolling it back. Recognize the problem. Forgive me. We can start recognizing the problem and roll it back. And to me, I would just say, no, you're not getting a visa to study, period. End of story. We don't owe any country a quota on visas to study at our universities. So, no. And Harvard is sitting on billions in endowment. MIT, Princeton, Columbia, all of these, University of Michigan, University of California, all of these big prestigious universities, they're swimming in money. They don't need Chinese money. It's just freaking greed. Well, China's going to be insulted. Too bad. The answer, I would say, you should have thought of that before you unleashed COVID on us. Bye. I mean, come on, enough is enough. How much more are we going to give them? Because their goal is to swallow us, to bribe us, and to eventually financially take us over. So I don't want that. Now, we're a very big country, a powerful country, a wealthy country. It takes time to buy up a country like ours. But that's the Chinese pattern wherever they go. They just buy up country after country after country. And then they just own them. And then they say jump and these countries say how high. That's what they're doing here. And notice, they're always offended. That's their shtick. Every time you sit down from a Chinese Communist Party official, they're always offended about something, always a grievance. And then when you say, well, what about what you did to us? Oh, how dare you say this? So they always play the grievance game. No, I'm done with it. You're a mass murderer. You killed over 1 million Americans. You destroyed our economy. By the way, you enslaved your own people. Okay, on top of that, but let that go. And you think you have a right to come to our universities? I don't think so. You think you have a right to buy our farmland? I don't think so. You've stolen enough of our research and development. You've stolen enough of our best technology. Okay? You're not stealing anymore. Okay, a lot of messages coming in, not just on the text line, emails, but even on Messenger. Jeff, what about the mayor of California? By the way, her name is Eileen Wang. What about that mayor of California in Arcadia? She just admitted that she is a Chinese spy. You think she's the only one secretly embedded in the government or high up in this country? Question mark? No, you're completely right. You're completely right. And to me, this was a remarkable story. Here is the mayor of Arcadia, California. And by the way, I know I mentioned it, last week, but it bears mentioning again. Always appearing with American-themed earrings, an American pin proudly displayed on her, whatever, if she had like a suit on or whatever. But whenever she was at a public function, I mean, she screamed red, white, and blue. And it turns out she was an agent for China. Educated here, given all the opportunities in the world, and was the mayor, literally the mayor, and apparently had a very bright future in California politics. And they caught her. She was fronting for the Chinese Communist Party. She was helping to perpetuate their propaganda. She was taking orders from them. And she admitted that she's a spy for the Chinese. Now, I'm telling you, she's not the only one. And that's why, to me, you allow 500,000-600,000, and then you keep renewing it and renewing it and renewing it. I mean, it's like committing suicide. I mean, all we're doing is empowering our enemy, educating our enemy, enabling our enemy. And what if they have children? Those are anchor babies. As someone texted me, and I thought it was a very good point, Jeff, you're looking at 600,000 students. Once they start having anchor babies, those kids are Americans. Then what are you going to do? 617-266-6868. Dan in Connecticut. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Dan. Go ahead. Dan? All right, I think we're having a connection problem with Dan. Let's see if we can fix that. Dan, hang on. We'll fix it. We'll come right back to you. Joe on the South Shore. Thanks for holding, Joe, and welcome.
To quote a great talk show host from Boston, you're not 100% right. You're 1,000% right. I didn't give my real name. Joe. You're welcome. I'm not under my real name because my company was recently acquired by a Chinese company. I worked for an American company that was acquired. We were told so many things that were going to happen or going to stay the same or suppliers that were going to be bought from going forward. The ink wasn't dry on the deal, and all of that changed. You ever hear the saying, if you want to know how they're lying, watch if their lips are moving? It's exactly what goes on in a lot of cases. And I feel that's what happened to Trump when he went over and she told him, give me these students and I'll do whatever you want. You can't trust them. Jeff, I was watching CNN while they were over there. The delegation was there. And a commentator came on to CNN and said, the Chinese will do nothing but lie to you. If they're admitting that on CNN, how crazy is that? We can't trust these people. And you're right. They're not coming here to go to our lower universities. They're coming here to go to the elite universities and take that and go back home. They're not coming here like you did from Canada on your own to get a better life. They're coming here to take everything we have and take it back there. The company I work for has to send a QC team over there. Before we were acquired, we had to send a QC team over there to make sure quality control, to make sure that the product that we were told we were getting is actually what we were getting. They'll change specs. They'll do different things, hide things inside as far as quality goes, and send you a product that's inferior, and just grin and smile just like she did to his face, knowing all the while that they're sticking it to you on the back end.
Well, that's the way they operate. I mean, and it's well known. It's well known. How do I say this? It's widely known, obviously, in China. It's well known all across Asia. It's well known with people who do business with them. They stiff you on everything, on quality, on price, on promises, on contracts. That's why, to me, you don't do business with them. You're asking for trouble. And trouble is exactly what we're going to get. My question to you, do you believe the Chinese when they say they're going to help Trump out with the war in Iran?
No, absolutely not.
Interesting. Now, what about the fact that they're going to buy these Boeing planes? They're going to buy our oil. They're going to buy our soybeans. What do you make of that? Okay, let's go right back to Joe on the South Shore. Joe obviously knows quite a bit about the CCP and their businesses that are aligned with the Chinese Communist Party. His company was just bought up by one. And basically he says, don't trust them. If they're moving their lips, they're lying. That's how you know they're lying. They're moving their lips. Joe, I want to ask you, Trump he says he got some big economic concessions. 200 planes are going to be built here in the United States and then sold to the communist Chinese. 737s, 777s. These are big planes, a lot of jobs. China now is lining up to buy our oil because the Iran market now has been cut off due to the blockade. And he says they got a great deal on farm products and especially soybeans. When you look at what we're giving and what we're getting, is it a good deal in your view?
I don't think it's a good deal because I think they may buy some of that, but they won't buy all those 200 planes. They won't buy all those soybeans. They'll find some way to back out of it at some point down the road. Meanwhile, their students are coming here immediately. As you said earlier, you said something about giving subsidies to farmers, and I'm not a big fan of government subsidies, but I think that would be a much wiser use of the money to give subsidies or help our farmers diversify and move into other things that we can use here in this country or sell to other countries that won't lie to your face.
Amen. Joe, amen. Thank you so much for that call. Outstanding call. Look, one of the things, and it's politically very incorrect, so the media refuses to discuss this. But again, I'm not talking about ordinary Chinese in China and certainly not Chinese Americans, but the leadership in China and their children. Okay, though, in other words, those that are tied to the elites of the Chinese Communist Party. They have a sense of supremacy, racial supremacy, cultural supremacy, historical supremacy. They truly believe that they are superior, especially if you talk to them and, you know, when they let their guard down a little bit. They believe they're superior to the Japanese, to the Koreans, to the Vietnamese, to the Thai, to, you know, people from Thailand, to you name it, Cambodians, it doesn't matter. And they think they're superior to America and Americans. And I remember I spoke about a dissident that used to write for one of my publications, and he was a dissident of the Chinese regime. And he said, you have no idea how profoundly and deeply racist the leadership in communist China is, and how they inculcate and indoctrinate their communist supporters into thinking that China is the most superior civilization in the history of the world. And one of the ways they think they're so superior is that essentially they view everyone else as quote-unquote barbarians. Who can match 10,000 years of Chinese civilization and culture? I mean, this is what they tell themselves. We were once the Middle Kingdom, the greatest power in the world, the superpower in the world, thousands of years ago, when Europeans were still in caves. So they see themselves as culturally superior, racially superior, historically superior, civilizationally superior. That's why they don't care if we're insulted or not insulted. That's why they think they even have a right, or they're allowed. If they want to stiff us, let them stiff us. Who are they stiffing? You're just stiffing barbarians. In other words, they don't fundamentally respect us. And it's nothing personal to Americans. They just don't respect the non-Han Chinese. And I want to read to you this text. It's from 603. And I think hits the nail right on the head because it captures that sense of racial cultural superiority that the CCP leadership and their followers have. Jeff, first off, our universities shouldn't be dependent on Chinese foreign students any more than American companies should be dependent on illegal aliens as employees. You're sacrificing the future on the altar of the present. Secondly, do you think the Han Chinese give even a thought to what might offend Americans? Don't get me wrong, Jeff. There are a lot of wonderful Chinese people. But I've had friends from Beijing. And trust me when I tell you, you haven't seen a truly supremacist attitude until you've met some native Han Chinese and get their honest opinion on things. They look down on everyone, including American-born Chinese people, who they call, quote-unquote, ABCs, American-born Chinese. So a people and a group who have that high of an opinion of themselves are going to worry primarily about what offends them and them only. I don't think we should capitulate to that kind of attitude. Do you? Of course not. And that's what I mean. Every time you get into a meeting with them, they're always offended. And they berate you. And they act superior to you. Because ultimately they think they are superior to us. And that's what gives them the right to cheat, to steal, to fleece us, to take advantage of us. And that's the attitude that I'm telling you, you're going to see again and again. You're not going to change that attitude. And that's why I'm saying no. You don't need people like that, people tied to the Chinese Communist Party in our country. Period. Full stop. Agree, disagree. Dan, I think we restored connection. Connecticut, thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
How you doing, Jeff?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Good. It's always a great day with the Lord leading the way. But, man, I'll tell you, these guys that are calling in and everyone's, like, against the Trump. And, listen, we need to stick together. Do you think that all these people that call in and say, you know, Trump this and Trump that, he made a bad deal. And do you think that Trump would hand our country to the CCP or think Israel is running America? I mean, Trump is making a deal. He knows he loves this country. He will never give in to any of these people. We have midterms coming. We need to stick together as Republicans. We need to come together with Trump. We need to back him. He knows what he's doing. He needs these midterms. We need the Chinese vote. I mean, think about it. And then after the midterms comes, watch what he does. He's going to come back. He's going to all this fraud that JD is finding and everything with the mayor out there in Arcadia. Everything. This is all coming to a head. But we got to get through the midterms. Everyone's got to stick together like the libs. If we can be like the libs till November, we're going to make it. But if we don't, and everyone's, oh, Trump this, oh, this, it's not going to happen.
Well, look, Dan, I am going to vote Republican. I'm going to vote for Trump, essentially, in the midterms. And I'm going to do everything in my power to prevent the Democrats from winning. So I think no matter whatever you think about Trump, criticize this or criticize that, he is infinitely better than the alternative. It's not even close. Okay? So I want you to know where I'm coming from. I don't like the deal. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, Dan, I'm sorry. I'm not going to stand here and say it's a great deal when I don't think it's a great deal. Now, I don't know what was promised behind closed doors. I don't know what Xi said he's going to do, say, regarding Iran, which may end the war quickly and decisively. I don't know. So maybe Trump felt this is the price. I'm willing to pay the price. I'm just telling you, to me, there is no benefit to 500,000 Chinese students, again, the children of the CCP, being given access to our most elite, prestigious universities and colleges. They're going to steal our R&D. They're going to steal our intellectual property. They're going to steal our technology. It's a given. And you're just adding hundreds and hundreds of thousands of spies. Mark in Chelmsford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Mark.
This is regarding the things you were talking about this morning about Trump doing whatever he's doing with the Chinese. And I'm in full agreement that the Chinese started a biological war that we didn't decide not to participate in, except the killing of all our family and friends and so forth, and the destruction of our economy. And we haven't got paid back for that yet. And I don't know what's going to take to pay that back. But in the meantime, this liar over there who made up the book for all terrorists to do what they do with their games of dealing with hostages and whatever terror they're trying to present, and delay, lie, and assume the other party is beneath them and they can do whatever they want with them, is the attitude. And it comes from the Communist Party and people like this Z, whatever his name is, killing all, has no regard to, as far as I'm concerned, life in his own country, let alone life anywhere else. So killing 5 million people nationwide was not a big deal to him. I mean, not nationwide, but worldwide. So if we're going to, I think there's something else going on here that we're not knowing about yet. And I'm thinking that we're just trying to get past, we're playing a political game right now, we meaning Trump. And I believe we don't do anything until they reciprocate on what they say they're doing, and we only do proportionally to what they say. So if they say 200 airplanes, I want the full payment of the 200 airplanes before we complete the process of all students. If that's the main thing, or, whatever many bushels of soybeans, the full amount is done before the full amount that. And the other thing I'm thinking is, why are we reciprocating one way? If he feels very hurt, he meaning the Chinese, they're butthurt because we're not going to allow students to come in, why aren't they allowing students to come into their place and also reap the American freedom benefit?
Oh, brilliant. See, that's what I would have done if I was at the negotiating table. I would have said, well, I'm sorry, how many Americans do you allow into China? I mean, how many American students do you allow to? By the way, they have some of the finest universities in the world. I mean, it's Chinese indoctrination, communist indoctrination. But, Shanghai University, Beijing University, you graduate through one of those schools in China, you're set for life. I mean, that's like their equivalent of like Harvard and Yale or MIT. I mean, you've just, you've punched your own ticket in life. So why don't you allow Americans to study in China? You don't. How come it's always one way with you guys? And by the way, they don't allow other peoples to, it's not just Americans. They don't allow Japanese students. They don't allow Taiwanese students. They don't allow Filipino students. I mean, they really look down on the Filipinos. Okay, but they don't allow South Korean students. Now, why is that? Because they think they're superior. And they openly say Chinese universities, those slots should be reserved for Chinese students. So you won't allow Americans to go, but you want to flood our country with your students? Tied, by the way, to your elite and to your regime? No, I don't think so. And just to go back to what you were saying a little bit earlier about reciprocity, you know, Mark, again, very perceptive. The original order that they had agreed on was 500 planes that they were going to buy from Boeing. So when Trump landed, he thought he was going to sign a deal for 500 planes. And then, of course, the CCP being the CCP, Xi Jinping being Xi Jinping, smiling, always smiling, that two-faced hypocrite. No, 500 went down to 200. By the way, don't take my word for it. The Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily did a couple of big pieces on this. Boeing stock actually went down after the deal. And you're going to say, what? Jeff, what do you mean? They're going to buy 200 mother planes. How can the stock go down? Because Boeing came out with a statement saying actually they were disappointed. Because the CCP, Xi Jinping, promised 500. So they were looking to ink for 500 planes. Now that would have been a mother deal. Instead, they do what they do. No, 300, 250, 200. They just nickel and dime you, nickel and dime you, nickel and dime you. So even that they lied on. So, and you're right. Are they even going to buy 200? Or by the time it's done, it's going to be 50. So you're completely right. With them, it's got to be complete reciprocity. No. You take one step. Whoa, we take one step. Okay, did he take the step? He took the step. He did. You're sure? Okay. Now you take another step. Okay, and then we take another step. That's the only way to deal with these people. But just to go to your point, they were supposed to buy 500. They only bought 200. And I would turn around to them and I'd say, I'm sorry, Xi, I'll tell you what, you want 500,000 student visas? No problem. 500,000 visas for American students. And fine, 500,000 Americans don't want to go? No problem. Japanese students. How about from Taiwan? How about European students? You know what? You don't like the Filipinos? You think less of them? They're inferior? Why don't you put some Filipinos at a good university in Shanghai or Beijing? Believe me, that degree will go far when they come back to Manila in the Philippines. And right away, it's like, no, his own people would hang him if Xi Jinping agreed to give out 500,000 student visas to Westerners or to non-Chinese. So everything with them is one way. By the way, on farmland, try to buy farmland in China. Try. Or buying up Chinese businesses or valuable Chinese property the way they do, say, here in Boston or in New York or in LA or all across our country. You think they would allow Americans, by the way, non-Chinese, never mind just Americans, but I'm just speaking about us. You think they would allow us to buy some of their richest farmland over their dead bodies? You think they would allow us to buy some of the most important real estate in China, whatever, in Shanghai or Beijing, over our dead bodies? Everything with them, even if you do business there. Tell me, American, if you do business in China, tell me if I'm wrong. Because I know I'm not wrong. Any entrepreneurs out there, it's got to be with the government. It's always a public-private partnership, and they always have 51%. In other words, a controlling stake. So even if they do business with outsiders, it's with the regime, and the regime, 51%. They're always in control, and you can't buy farmland. They won't allow you to buy. They won't allow you to buy an apple tree. So we sell out our country to them, but they get to keep and own their country? No, I'm sorry. It doesn't work like that. Again, two-way street. They're not friends. They're not friends. They're our enemies. And to me, you don't make deals with enemies. And if you have to make a deal, as Reagan said, trust but verify. Or in this case, don't trust and verify. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. President Trump now says he will grant 500,000 to 600,000 visas to Chinese students so that they can attend our universities and colleges. He says our university system relies on it, A, and B, it would be insulting to China if we didn't allow their students to study here. I disagree with the president. What say you? 617-266-6868. Okay, let me ask all of you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. And it touches on exactly what I just said now about Chinese students and American students, and whether American students are even allowed to enter Chinese universities. Should President Trump make acceptance of students from China in our universities conditional upon China accepting American students? In plain English, if we're going to let Chinese students come here, should China allow American students to study there? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER. You can also vote via X. My handle there, all one word. And yes, I was very active on X last night. My handle, @the Kuhner Report, @the Kuhner Report, Kuhner. Okay, Mike, who do you want me to go to next? Dave, our Western PA constitutionalist correspondent out in the Pittsburgh area in Pennsylvania. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Good morning. How you doing, buddy?
Good, good.
Good. Did you like the video I sent you?
I thought the video you sent me was phenomenal and very funny.
Yeah,
very,
Jeff,
very funny.
Yeah, not to get off topic, buddy, but Chinese, the only thing good about them is the real pretty girls and their food. But, besides the point, Jeff, I made that video, Jeff, because Summer Lee, our congresswoman here, I call her Dummer Lee, she's so transfixiated on race and gun control. I had to make that to spit in her face. But, yeah, I'm glad you liked it, Jeff. I thought you would like it, got a kick out of it. But, Jeff, as far as China again, Trump going over there was good. I'm glad they got to agree with us in the Straits of Hormuz, because Iran needs to be put in their place, not only by us, but their neighbors too, Jeff. And then as far as, with the CEOs going there, Elon and all the other people there from the other companies around the country, that was a good thing for us. Jeff, because the Chinese, we don't hear it from the liberal media, Jeff, but the Chinese economy isn't as strong as what people think, Jeff. They're in deficits themselves. I know they owe our debt and they owe our Democratic Party. The donkeys that they are, the jackasses, their logo. But in long running short, Jeff, is that they're going to try to buy up our country, and Trump's not letting them do that.
Well, Dave, he's got to block them. He's got to stop them. And look, contrary to what many people said, I had no problem with him whatsoever bringing in Elon Musk, the CEO of NVIDIA. I could run, the whole list. There was a whole list of, Fortune 500 companies. Yes, I want us to go into the Chinese market, of course. Chinese are allowed to come into our market. We should go into their market. And I want them to buy American goods and American products and American services. Why? Because it's going to lead to a lot of jobs here at home. A lot of jobs. No question. So I thought, no, I agree with Trump all the way. You know, he's not just the president of the country, and in many ways, he's also the CEO. And the economy is, it's incredibly important. And to reshore a lot of this industry that we've sent off to places like China and India to bring it back, but also to break open that China market. So I'm all for it. Dave, my question to you is this. The Chinese, their price for these economic concessions was these student visas. And in the past, they would ask for 250,000. Now, though, they said it's 500,000, almost 600,000. So they want us to double the number of student visas that we give to Chinese students. What do you make of that, Dave? Are you for giving them visas? And do you think Trump gave them too much?
As far as with the visas, Jeff, I'll start with that question. No, Jeff, you're 1,000% correct to quote you, my friend. We don't need any more of them over here. Not that I hate the Chinese people. They're great people. You know, they want to be free. But the thing is, Jeff, how do we know they're not communist insurgents? You know, just like, what's that out there in California? One of the
old spy. She admitted to it.
Jeff, no, I would love them to be here as long as, you know, they want to become Americans and do the right thing and work here in our industry. But no, Jeff, you can't trust them. They're spies. I mean, Jeff, like you just said, if there's a mayor in California, how do we know there's not a mayor in Timbuktu, California? How do we know that Gavin Newsom isn't connected to him, Jeff? Which I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's maybe going out of there on a branch, Jeff. But, dude, I mean, come on, Jeff. Hunter Biden's bought by the communist Chinese. I mean, come on. Jeff, do you agree with that point? I'm not made to put a question on you, buddy, but I think Gavin Newsom may be connected in some way. I mean, look at Mitt Romney's kids. They were connected too, Jeff, with John Kerry's kids, too.
Kerry, Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, Gavin Newsom, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. They bought the presidency. Kamala Harris, they own her lock, stock, and barrel. And look, this is the elephant in the room. So why don't we just confront it? And thank you so much, Dave, as always, for that call, my friend. Why does Mayor Michelle Wu, she comes from Taiwan, okay, her parents are Taiwanese, but they are ethnically Chinese, but they come from Taiwan, okay, she's not from China. Her parents are not from China, they're from Taiwan. But the fact of the matter is, they have a consulate. China has a consulate in Boston. Why does Mayor Wu allow the Chinese communist flag periodically to be flown in Boston? I don't understand that. Why would you do that? Especially if your parents come from Taiwan. You know what they want to do to Taiwan. You know how they want to crush the people of Taiwan. If anybody should know Communist China's disastrous record on human rights and democracy, it should be Michelle Wu and her family. They fled Taiwan because it's too close to China. Because they're worried China's going to invade and annex them. Now, by the way, that's why this sense of racial, cultural superiority, that's the reason why the Chinese invaded Tibet and are mass murdering and slowly destroying the Tibetan people. That's why they're destroying the Uyghurs in Western China and sending them into re-education and concentration camps. That's why they want to crush the Falun Gong. And by the way, Christians all over the country. In other words, it's ethnic cleansing and it's cultural destruction of ancient peoples. This is what they're doing in their own country. So why would you want to have anything to do with this mass murdering genocidal regime? Now, let me just make one final point. This was many years ago. I was still in Montreal then. I was an undergraduate student. It was the early 1990s. And Grace and I decided to treat ourselves to a delicious Chinese meal. And there was a great Chinese restaurant. It's no longer there, but in downtown Montreal. And so we were eating. We had duck, and it was delicious. Anyway, the waiter and the family that owned the restaurant, the waiter was the son. And I was just bantering, talking, with the waiter. And it turns out, I said, hey, are you Chinese? Because the food here is so authentically Chinese, it's incredible. He said, yes, but we're from Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong was about to be delivered to China in 1997. It had been a colony of Great Britain. Britain signed an agreement with China, and they were going to hand it back. So it was just a few years before the handover. Now, this is very important. The Chinese made a written agreement, the Chinese Communist Party, that they would leave Hong Kong alone for 100 years after they acquired it. They called it One Nation, Two Systems. They said culturally, economically, politically, socially, nothing will change in Hong Kong. The only thing is you will no longer be under British sovereignty. You're going to be under Chinese sovereignty. That's it. That's it. We're not going to touch Hong Kong. That's it. You'll be technically part of China, but the freedoms you have in Hong Kong, you're going to keep. The free market system you have, we're going to keep. The rule of law that they had developed in Hong Kong, you're going to keep. The private property rights, you're going to keep. Your wealth, everything. China will not touch it. The regime will not touch it. So he said to me, well, we fled Hong Kong. That's why we're here in Montreal. We fled to Canada. Canada was giving visas, and we came. And then I said, yeah, but why are you fleeing? Because the communist Chinese have said you're going to have at least 100 years, one nation, two systems, that they're going to leave you alone. And I'll never forget his response. He was taking plates off the table, and he just looked at me and he said, they lie. He said, they lie. All they do is lie. And he shook his head. He goes, once Hong Kong is transferred, it's gone. It's gone. And that's exactly what happened. Jimmy Lai is rotting in jail now. That brave publisher, editor of an outspoken anti-communist newspaper in Hong Kong. They have crushed his newspaper. They have put journalists in prison. They are now crushing all of Hong Kong's freedoms. Hong Kong now is nothing more than a satellite of Beijing. Okay, let me ask all of you, double-barreled question. Is China, in your view, the number one geopolitical adversary that the United States faces? I understand the mullahs in Tehran, if they get a nuclear bomb, the damage, the danger that they pose, no question. And, Russia is Russia. There's a potential for World War III over Ukraine. So, I'm not saying there aren't problems elsewhere in the world. North Korea has nuclear weapons with Kim Jong-un, little rocket man. He's unstable. He's unpredictable. Who knows what he may do in the future. So we have serious challenges that we face. No question. But to me, and you may agree or disagree, the Red China, as it's called, Communist China, the CCP, the party in particular, the leadership, has now just replaced the Soviet Union, and we are now in a new Cold War. And so, to me, we should start treating the communist Chinese regime as we did the old Soviet Union. Contain them, treat them as enemies and adversaries, and certainly not invite the children of their elites to come into our universities or work at our most sensitive biolabs or work in some of our most important or prestigious companies or corporations, because we know they're there to spy and to steal our technology and our research and development. Am I wrong? 617-266-6868. And if they are our number one enemy / adversary, should we sell Taiwan a $12 billion weapons package that Congress has appropriated, that the Taiwanese desperately want, but that Xi Jinping told Trump, don't do it. You start arming Taiwan, it will be a red line, and you are crossing our red line. And Trump now has said he's not giving an answer, either yes or no. He hasn't made a final decision yet on whether he will sell the weapons package to, or send the weapons package to Taiwan. Should we now arm the Taiwanese to the teeth? I say yes. What say you? 617-266-6868 is the number. Dane in Mississippi. Thanks for holding, Dane, and welcome.
Jeff, not only should they not send them, I agree with you 100%, 1,000%, they shouldn't send six. Six would be too many, let alone 600,000. This is, I don't know, Jeff. You and I can see this. The common man can see this, what they're doing by sending these. And these are the best of the best, brightest students they can send. So they're very intelligent. They can become spies. They can absorb. They can do anything the Communist Party wants them to do, okay, for sending them over here. Those people will be our future enemies, and they were the ones that will take down this country because they're learning from us. They can see inside our minds because they know they've been here. They've been to the finest universities in America. This is ridiculous. And I'll tell you something. I was in Naples. I left there. The reason I left is I was working at the Naples, brand new, beautiful Naples Four-Season Hotel. Just opened up. I was working there 3 months, okay? I'm 73 years old. They fired me to said I was too old. Guess who they hired? A 22-year-old foreign HB1 student, okay? And all the management, Chinese, Mexican, Indian, not Americans. They're taking our jobs. They're taking great spots in the university. This is ridiculous. I don't know why President Trump makes such brilliant moves and then he makes such stupid moves. I just don't understand them sometimes. And this is one of the dumbest moves, okay? All you're doing is giving the number one enemy, okay, and I say enemy. They walk around and look at the places. But see, you and I, we are tax-paying, hard-working people. We're not living in the ivory towers that Xi Jinping lives in, President Trump lives in. They don't see what's happening to the common man, paying the taxes, working his, what off. This is ridiculous, okay? Why don't you give him some more gifts? This doesn't make sense. I don't know what's wrong with President Trump. To allow the Chinese to send over 600 of the brilliant, the finest, and they turn them into the most hardcore communists, spies, whatever they want to.
Oh, you're dead on. And look, I think you make a brilliant point. Okay, so I started the show saying on two issues now, MAGA is in open rebellion. One of them, obviously, the 500,000 to 600,000 student visas to Chinese students that President Trump now says he will grant so that they can attend some of our elite universities and colleges. The second issue is the issue of buying farmland. There is a bill in Congress, frankly pushed initially by Trump. This was maybe a year and a half ago. Overwhelming support, not just among Trump voters and Republicans, but among independents and even some Democrats, to ban Chinese firms, companies, individuals tied to the CCP from buying farmland, and especially what we've seen now under Biden, this phenomenon took place where they're buying precious farmland right near military installations. Secret, or I won't say secret, but sensitive U.S. military installations here in the United States, and they are buying a ton of farmland right next to these installations. It's obvious. They want to control our food supply, and they want to spy. It's like the spy balloon, if you remember that under Biden. And Biden just enabled the spy balloon to just hover over our military bases, some of them with our producing our most sensitive drone technology. And that thing just was above, hovering for days, just like a vacuum cleaner sucking up all that information. And then they just kept going and going, base after base after base. Well, many of those bases are surrounded by they're in rural areas, they're surrounded by agricultural land, farmland, that the Chinese are paying top dollar to buy. The Republicans have a bill. In fact, they were about to introduce it. It was going to pass. That would ban Chinese companies, CCP-linked individuals, from being allowed to buy farmland anywhere in the United States, and especially near military bases or sensitive military installations. President Trump now has done a complete 180. He has told the Republicans to pull back the bill, that he will not support it, and if they do pass it, he will not sign it. He was asked by Sean Hannity, why? Why? Again, it was something that Xi Jinping insisted on, for them to have this deal about buying our oil, selling our soybeans, and purchasing about 200 Boeing airplanes, and to start to open up the China market. Xi said, you have to open up your farmland to us. You have to allow us to continue to buy it. Trump now has said yes. Roll cut to Mike.
I would assume I'm in Beijing. If I wanted to buy property near one of their military installations, I don't think President Xi...
No, they wouldn't let you. I don't... Look, it's not that I love it. You want to see farm prices drop? You want to see farmers lose a lot of money? Just take that out of the market. But they've had a lot of land for a long time. Obama did nothing about it. They bought a lot of it during the Obama administration. He did nothing about it.
And so basically he said, there's not much I can do. They've already bought a lot of the land. And to protect the farmers, because they're, as I say, they pay top dollar. I mean, how do I say this? They're paying for a land that's overpriced. That's clearly overpriced. Nobody else would pay that kind of money, but the Chinese are. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, why? I mean, why? Why would they do that? Who pays more than what the market calls for? And I think it's obvious. So, a chokehold on our food supply, and I think they're obviously spying. And so for them, they're thinking down the road. This is long term. We're thinking money now in my pocket. We think short term, they think long term. And again, remember what I said earlier. They use our greed against us. That's our Achilles heel. Okay, every country has a sin, like individuals. No one's perfect. To me, America's sin, its deadly sin, is greed. I mean, man, we will sell our parts of our country for the, on the altar of, we will sell so much on the altar of the almighty buck. So President Trump is saying, look, it's going to kill the farmers. It's going to crash the market prices. Farmers are going to lose potentially a lot of money, because if you take the Chinese out of the market, no one's going to be paying that kind of money for farmland. And so he says, I don't like it, but the Chinese insist on it. This was already done first under Obama, now under Biden. In other words, what's done is done, and so let them just continue. I disagree. Ban it. At a minimum, you stop the damage. And then I would say start buying back the land. I say, I'm sorry. No. You're spying on our military bases. That's espionage. It's a threat to our national security. And on national security grounds, we are going to force you to sell us back the land. We'll pay you top dollar. You want to be fair about it? You're not going to lose a penny on this. But that agricultural land is coming back. And it's going to be owned by Americans. Even if it means being owned by the government, I don't care. As long as it's not owned by the CCP. And let me just make one last point, and then I want to go right back to the blazing lines. 617-266-6868. I don't know what's more precious than food. I guess water. Your food supply chain. Your food supply is everything. Why would we be selling? Look, we're not selling it to Canada or Canadians, or Mexicans or, I don't know, Dutch investors or, Brazilians or Japanese or whatever. We're not okay. We're friends. We're allies. That's something different. Even then, I'm uneasy about it, but still, okay, they're allies, they're friends. To our number one enemy and adversary. And again, what we saw during COVID, how we had outsourced so much of our supply chains that when a pandemic happened, we were reliant upon China for everything, for medicines, medications, pharmaceuticals, cloth masks, you name it, the most basic equipment, everything was being made in China, or they had control over. Now we're going to start to give them complete control and access over our food, our wheat, our corn, some of the most fertile land in the United States. No. I'm sorry. This is now becoming almost suicide. That's them with their boot on our neck, which they can crush anytime they want. They can turn off the food supply like this, the snap of a finger. I don't think you should allow any foreign power to buy up our food supply. Okay, if it's an ally, as I said, Canadians, Swedes, the Dutch, the Japanese, whatever, Brazilians, that's okay, all right. That's a manageable risk. But China? No way. No way. And again, notice the contradiction and the hypocrisy, the double standard. Trump himself admitted it. Forget farmland. Can you buy property in China outright? No. Especially property near a military installation. No way. No. Trump even says it. No. They won't let you. They won't. Of course, they'd be crazy to let you. And I get it, Obama did it, but why do we have to do it? Just because the dear leader sold us out and Biden sold us out, why do we have to continue to sell ourselves out? And so I'm a big net on allowing China to continue to buy up our farmland. A big net. Big net. Big no. And now you know why. These are the two issues over the weekend, last 72 hours, that has MAGA in an absolute uproar. and they're asking Trump, they're practically pleading with him. 617-266-6868 is the number. All right, so let me throw, as I like to say, this log on the fire. Should the United States continue to allow China to buy up our farmland, especially near sensitive military installations and bases? Trump now says he doesn't like it, but the answer is yes. He will allow it to continue. I disagree with the president. Where do you stand? 617-266-6868. Lee in Waltham. Thanks for holding, Lee, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
I once again have my little list in front of me. I've been listening. Well, I listen on a regular basis. But this morning, I'd like to comment on a couple of things. First of all, I agree with you in disagreeing with the president regarding a couple of things. The land purchase should have been negotiated as a land rental with both the U.S. and China benefiting from the crops. That should be the first thing. That is the first thing on my list. Secondly, you asked about the Chinese being a threat. They are, and you mentioned Russia and Iran. They are a stealth threat to our country. And I'll give you an example. Do you recall a few years ago when the MIT medical students and another occasion where the Harvard medical students tried to get out of the country some sort of thing that they were working on, and I think it had something to do with viruses. It was a medical thing. They were trying to get samples out of the country. And do you recall the professor who we never heard anything about after that? The professor was arrested. I don't recall anything regarding the outcome of a court case with him. We're hanging in like Never Never Land with getting information from our own government and following up, and this would be the news media. What's wrong with them? Not following up with those two very important instances that happened separately years apart and included a professor. No one should be allowed from China to have a visa, a student visa. It should be an exchange program. It should be, a student exchange program. We should exchange one student from the U.S. for a student from China, and they need to be vetted. I highly doubt that we are vetting students from China as given by example of what happened. And that might be going on.
Lee, I promise I'll let you finish, but I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. On every point, I love it. An exchange program, I'm all for it. Vet the Chinese students. We don't vet them. That's a big problem. And I remember those two cases, both MIT and Harvard. Okay, Harvard. And you're right. One of the two, a professor was involved. And these were pathogens, viruses that they were working on, and they tried to smuggle it out. These were Chinese students here on a visa, student visa, and they tried to smuggle it out of the United States back to China because they were like, ooh, this is really advanced, cutting-edge stuff. We want to get it out of the hands of the Americans and put it back into the hands of the CCP. And look, Lee, I promise I'll let you finish. There are videos now that have come out, don't even take my word for it, where leading Chinese Communist Party officials, including Xi Jinping, but his deputy, their, what they would consider their Secretary of State, our version of our Secretary of State, their Secretary of Defense, their spy chief, where they openly brag in front of the Communist Party officials sometimes even at their top universities, how they owned Joe Biden. They admit it. How most of Congress is already theirs. How the media, how much of our media they've already bought up and owned. How they bought up so many think tanks in Washington, D.C. How they're already buying up so much of Hollywood and our entertainment. How they're infiltrating our universities. How much they steal from our leading companies and corporations. And to me, I'll never forget this. There was maybe 300-400 students in a classroom. And I believe it was the spy chief that was giving like a lecture or whatever, a 1-hour lecture on the rivalry between the United States and China. And he said, let me tell you the dirty secret about the Americans. And the room, you couldn't hear a pin drop. And this is what he said. Everyone is for sale. And the crowd, they were like maybe 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. Again, all of them, children of CCP officials. Okay? All of them. They're all members of the Communist Party. Their parents are communist elites. They started laughing and clapping. Like, ha, 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 ha. And they were like clapping. As if like we're superior. Like we're not for sale. We have values. We have integrity. We have real patriotism. You can't buy us off. We're the communist Han Chinese. But these Americans, without saying it this crudely, this part I'm adding, but he's basically saying they're a bunch of prostitutes. They're a bunch of whores. They'd sell their grandmother for a nickel. But he just said, he goes, everyone is for sale. He was describing their strategy of, as you put it, stealth, a stealth infiltration. And he says, we're infiltrating. And he just went sector by sector, industry by industry, institution by institution. And in fact, there was one point, all he did, he just said, and then there's this was under Biden, then there's President Joe Biden. That's all he said. He said, and then there's President Joe Biden. And the whole classroom started laughing and clapping. Like it's an open secret. We own them. And he bragged how they bought off Hunter, how they bought off the kids, how through the kids they funneled money to Joe Biden. And he said, we tell him what to do. And so you can tell for them, they feared Trump. And to be honest, they fear you and they fear me and they fear the show and MAGA. Because we're the only ones who are not for sale, because we're patriots. Sure, we want to do well. Sure, we want to feed our families. Sure, we want the country to be wealthy and prosperous, of course. But we have limits. We're not for sale. That's it. Period. Full stop. There are some things, money, we're not going to sell our soul. There are some things money just can't buy. Period. Full stop. And that's why they had to either compromise Trump or threaten Trump or get rid of Trump. That's why they stole the election or helped Biden steal the election. And that's why they've been waging all-out war. They want him to lose the midterms. They don't want this Iran war to succeed. They want this war to be a disaster for Trump, particularly through high gas and oil and energy prices, and that he get absolutely shellacked in the midterms. And frankly, I'm being very candid now, they'd love to see the Democrats assassinate Trump. They'd like to see him gone completely. If not, have him impeached and paralyzed and politically crippled. So that's what we're dealing with. So you're completely right. This is all, they're like a stealth enemy. In that sense, they're smart. They're cunning and they're very smart. They're not like the old Soviets, the old Bolsheviks. You remember Khrushchev taking his shoe off at the UN and banging the podium and saying to America, we will bury you. And he's banging his shoe. Like the Soviets, the Russians, they told us to our face, you're our enemy and we're going to crush you and defeat you. No, 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 no. The Chinese, 10,000 years, very smart. A lot of guile, a lot of deception, very cunning. They throw you a banquet fit, not for a king, for an emperor. Lee, I'm telling you, on the way back on the plane, I have a journalist friend, a buddy, who went on with the entourage. He said, Jeff, for half the trip back, everybody kept talking about how amazing the food was. They're saying, I'm telling you, they threw a feast, but it was the quality of the food. They said, I'm telling you, best meal I've ever had in my life. And the wine and the champagne and the desserts and the pageantry and the show and they did the YMCA, the Village People, and they serenaded Trump. And he said it was a spectacular show. He goes, they didn't roll out the red carpet. They rolled out the gold carpet. The carpet was made of gold, like figure of speech. So what they do is they toast you and they wine and dine you and they praise you with a big smile. But on the other side of their mouth, they're threatening you over Taiwan. They want their visas. They want their farmland or our farmland. And they want to continue to infiltrate us. Because the Chinese have a saying. They think war is stupid. They laugh at, by the way, the Russians too. Xi Jinping has contempt for Putin. How could you get your country involved in a 4-year war? Bleed yourself like this. Lose, hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million men. Like, what are you, crazy? You can accomplish more through bribery than you ever could through a military invasion or occupation. So for them, their logic is buy a country without firing a bullet. That's the real art of the deal. And that's what they do in country after country after country. And the Chinese think now they're invincible. They think it's inevitable. They believe now they're on a par with us. And they believe in a matter of 25 to 50 years, they're going to surpass us. And they believe they're going to be calling the shots. We will be their vassal. And they can't wait to treat us like they're slaves. And they're amazed. Last point, what the spy chief said was that the Russians sell themselves for much more than the Americans. They're openly saying, no, in Russia, we buy Russians. But man, if you want to buy the mayor of St. Petersburg or the mayor of Moscow, you're looking at least $1 billion. $2 billion buys you the president in America, the world's greatest superpower. You can barely get a city in Russia for $1 billion. In America, you get a president for $2 billion. You get a member of Congress, he's contemptuous, $10 million, they're yours. Like a $10 streetwalker. They're like, hey, come on, you're a member of Congress, for God's sake. You sit on committees, you appropriate, through the budget, trillions of dollars. And this is how low you sell yourself? So what I'm telling you is, and the Chinese are open now, they're naked. I think it's their mistake. I think they should have waited much longer and concealed themselves and be deceptive. Now they've come out of the closet. And we're onto them. The region is onto them. The world is onto them. So I think they broke their cover too early. Because I think this is the problem with the Chinese. I'm talking about the leadership. It is their arrogance and their hubris. This is what always is their downfall. You look at Chinese history and their emperors, the ones that have fallen, and periodically they fall and the whole thing collapses. It's always due to their pride, hubris, and arrogance. They're very much like the Germans that way. The Germans have the same fatal sin. But anyway, let that go. I'm just going to stick to China. Xi is too smart by half. And you can see his arrogance through his eyes and his demeanor. And I'm telling you, he's asking for too much, and he exposed himself and China and their real intentions. And that's why I think now we have to open our eyes and realize China is not our friend. They're our mortal enemy. And let's stop them while we still have the time and the power and the ability to do so. Lee, final word to you.
Yes, and I listened to everything you said. There are just 2 points I want to make and throw this out there because I've observed this with my own eyes in my own community. And that is that there is that segment of the Chinese population where the young people come here as students, and I see it at Brandeis, I see it at Bentley, and other Ivy League around the state, and I'm sure this happens around the country. Here's what happens. They come here. They see the freedoms we have. They see this wonderful economy. They get great jobs because these students are brilliant. And they work. They have their careers. They have their jobs. They take their parents over here. Their parents get U.S. residency. And there are some complexes that, residential complexes, that 30% of the population in these senior complexes are the parents of these kids. So, and they're all driving. I see it every day. They're driving Lexus and Mercedes, and they're having good lives here in America. So let's not confuse those people. I just took a cruise. I cannot tell you how much money was dropped in the jewelry shop, buying diamonds and gold and watches by Asian people. I never saw so many Asian people on a cruise. I love it. I love the fact that they want to come here. They assimilate. But we have to be very cautious and very careful that there is that segment, those students that come here with as part of the CCP. Okay? And that's one thing that I wanted to say. And finally, I want to tell you about Taiwan. You mentioned Taiwan before, and should we be selling military weapons to them? Taiwan should be a territory. I would be courting them. I would be courting the Taiwanese government to become a territory of the U.S. That gives us the right to protect ourselves and the obligation to protect them. That's my final word, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I love listening to your show.
Well, Lee, as always, very, very thoughtful call. Very thoughtful call. Lee, thank you so much. Look, I think, to be honest, if we try to make any move on Taiwan as a protectorate, as a territory, it would lead to war with China. That is their red line. I'm not saying to abandon Taiwan, quite the opposite. I'm the one that's saying give them the weapons, sell them the weapons. The $12 billion arms package, send it to them. Arm them to the teeth. But if we're going to say it's going to be ours or come into our zone, I'm telling you, the Chinese will go to war over that. The regime will go to war. And Taiwan is not worth World War III. With all due respect to the Taiwanese people. Make it a porcupine, as I say. Arm it to the teeth, where the Chinese say it's just not worth invading because we're going to get our mouth smashed. But if we made a play for Taiwan, China would strike with everything they have. We have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons. To me, it's not worth a world war. It just isn't. On that, I agree with Trump. I think on that, he's being very prudent, very cautious, very sober, very responsible. So it's a bit of a delicate balancing act. You want to arm them and can strengthen them and enable them to defend themselves as a deterrent without overly provoking the Chinese. And, in other words, keep the status quo. Just keep it everything just stay as it is. They're not independent. Many in Taiwan want to be independent. They're not independent. They're not a territory of ours, but they're also not a province of China. And just, let this, who knows? The Chinese regime may fall in 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody can predict the future. So, but if we made an aggressive play for Taiwan, I think no question, what Putin did to Ukraine is what China would do to Taiwan and us by extension if we were involved in Taiwan. Anyway, just my opinion. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Sorry, Jeff, I got a mouth full of Cheetos.
Friend. Mark, I don't think there's anybody more MAGA than you. I don't think there's anybody more pro-Trump than you. I don't think there's anyone more America first than you. So to me, you're the ultimate person to ask this question. Do you agree with Trump on the Chinese student visas? And do you agree with Trump on China being allowed to continue to buy farmland? What say you?
Well, Jeff, I'm going to surprise you because you know me. I'm full of surprises. I think Trump went about this the wrong way, and I'll tell you why. When he spoke to Xi in China, what he should have said was, before I even entertain the idea of issuing one single student visa, before I entertain of issuing the idea of any Chinese corporation or company buying a single acre of American farmland, you need...
Mark, we are up against it. 617-266-6868. Let's go right back to Mark in Medford. So, Mark, I asked you, no one's more MAGA than you are. No one's more pro-Trump than you are. What do you make of Trump on the issue of Chinese student visas and saying he will allow China to continue to buy up farmland? You said it's the way he approached it. That's where you disagree with him. And then please pick up where you left off.
What he should have said to Xi was, fine, okay, well, there's a few things you need to do for me, Xi. Number one on the list, Jeff, at the top of my list. You have to answer for Anthony Fauci and what you let him do in China. Number two, whatever our debt is financially with you needs to be wiped clean because of what you let Dr. Fauci do in China, and then it got leaked from the lab into your people, and you still allowed travel all over the world. That's number two. Number three, you say you want to work together with the United States. We should be friends. Well, you know what? Then cut all ties with Iran and do business with the United States, and that's it. Screw Iran. Buy all our oil, buy all our products. You don't need it from them.
Oh, I love it. I mean, Mark, you nailed it. Now, I'm just curious. Do you think, would Xi take that kind of a deal?
Well, according to what everybody's been saying about the Chinese, he might take the deal, but will he follow through with it? Probably not. Because they lie. Just like the Iranians, Jeff. They lie.
Mark, do you think then that Trump gave up too much too early?
I'm going to say I believe so. I believe so. He showed his cards, and now China sees his hand, and now China can do whatever they want to do with it.
Interesting. Mark, look, the speculation is, the scuttlebutt is that he got Xi, that Xi's going to lean on the mullahs now, hard, and that Iran is going to agree to reopen the strait. They're going to hand over all that stockpile of enriched uranium, and that Trump is going to then declare victory and end the war. So that Xi is going to play a key role in helping us win the war with Iran. That's why he made so many concessions. A, do you believe Xi will follow through? And B, is that enough in terms of what we've given Xi, that what the Chinese are potentially going to give us back in return? In other words, if they help us reopen the strait and they help us get back the enriched uranium and effectively help us, A, win the war and end the war, then is the farmland and the 500,000, 600,000 student visas, is it a fair trade?
Well, Jeff, I got to be honest with you, and I hope you'll agree with me on this. At this point now, I don't know what to believe. Yeah, Trump is telling us that, he's agreed to talk to the mullahs and this, that, and the other thing, and free up the Strait of Hormuz. But yet 2 days ago, you have President Trump on Air Force One coming home and saying, I didn't like the first sentence of the agreement with Iran, that they want control of the Strait of Hormuz. So which one is it? Which one is it, Jeff? Is he going to get them to reopen it, or is Iran the one we should believe saying that, no, we want control of it? And first of all, they should not have control of it because it's an open waterway. It's used for the whole world. Iran does not own it.
Amen. Amen. And by the way, I have the cut. I don't want to, I want to take more calls, but you're completely right. He said, the first sentence, I'm paraphrasing the president on Air Force One. He said, I saw their response. In the first sentence, they said they're going to retain control over the Strait of Hormuz. He goes, I just tore it up. I didn't even bother reading the second sentence because I just tore it up and threw it away. So far, Xi's not leaning on him. So, we'll see. But no, I'm with you. I'm with you all the way, Mark. Mark, as always, thank you very much for that call. Now, this is what I mean. Okay, you don't get, I'm telling you, I don't think it's possible to be more pro-Trump than Mark in Medford. To be more MAGA, more America first. And he's not happy with this. And this is not to criticize the president. This is just to let him know, if you've lost, not that he's lost him, that Mark is not going to support him anymore, but if you've lost him on these two issues, okay, the buying up of the U.S. farmland near our military bases and the 500,000 to 600,000 student visas, you've lost a lot of your base on these two issues. And I hope you reconsider, because your voters, many of your voters are not happy. Let's just put it this way. 617-266-6868. John in Peabody. Thanks for holding, John. And we don't have time for John? Okay. John, hang on. I'm going to come back to you, I promise, on the other side. 617-266-6868 is the number. John in Peabody. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
How you doing, Jeff?
Good. How are you, John?
Good, very good. Listen, I got complete faith in Trump. Look at what would have happened if Clinton got in for 8 years. We wouldn't even have a country. That being said, two of the things, 2 points I want to talk about. Number one, the NBA having all their uniforms made over there for the last 10 years, and all the other sports that are tied into China. And then I had a friend that went over there for a little business trip, and he's sitting down, and they got dogs and cats hanging up there in cages on hooks, waiting to be eaten, thrown into fried, boiling oil pots. You got a bunch of savages over there that have their culture as their culture. And all the people that want to, be friends with China, will tell them to keep their culture where they're coming in. And as far as 500,000 students, 70% of them come in here and they open up Chinese restaurants. Come on, cut it out. And you got 10% that might get into Harvard, Yale, and in Harvard and Yale, they've lost all credibility. They're gone. Those colleges are a joke. They were a joke in the 70s when they were burning the American flag during the Vietnam War, not even supporting our country. They were marching hand in hand with Hanoi Jane Fonda, for those kids that don't know, who was over there capitulating with the North Vietnamese and saying, you got any prisoners here, execute them. That's the type of rhetoric coming out of Hollywood. And for this guy, Mark, to say he supports Trump, he better go back and take a look at what Clinton and Obama would have been for 24 years or however long. And by the way,
you're right. No, look, they sold us down the river. You're completely right, John. Look, I'll never forget this till the day I die. China was on the ropes after we won the Cold War. The Soviet Union collapsed. Remember Tiananmen Square? Those brave pro-democracy, pro-American, by the way, students took to the streets, and the Chinese rolled out the tanks against literally unarmed people protesting, and their economy was a mess. They suffered so much under Mao, where he killed, 60 million Chinese, made an intentional famine that killed millions of them. I mean, they were a mess. And Bill Clinton was the one who said, no, we're going to put China in the World Trade Organization. We're going to trade with them. And we're going to just basically, transfer all of our wealth, our factories, our manufacturing. We dropped all our tariffs. They were dumping all their garbage, these products, into our country, their toys, everything they made that was, made of lousy quality, poisoned baby food, and they were just dumping everything in. And then China got our most sophisticated arms and weapons technology in exchange for campaign contributions to Clinton and Gore. And they sold us out. And then you had the dear leader, Obama, and it got even worse. That's when they infiltrated our country with spies. And that's when they really then began the trade deficits. It was disgusting. So they basically owned our market. And 60,000 factories were destroyed in the United States. 5 to 7 million working class jobs, good paying working class jobs gone, outsourced to China and other countries. They sold America out to build up China. Everything that China has, they stole from us, built off of our back. And, you're right. You talk about the universities. Look, take your pick now. Really, that's what it is. You want American communists or you want Chinese communists? Because that's pretty much what you have now at our universities. So it's either American communists or Chinese communists. So to me, there's no question. There's no question that all of this began with Clinton and Obama. They were the ones that sold us out to China, and we've been paying for it ever since. John, I'm just curious. Trump is right. He said this began under Obama, where they were allowing these huge Chinese businesses, wealthy businessmen tied to the CCP, to buy really valuable farmland, fertile, rich farmland right next to our military bases. Do you think we should continue to allow the Chinese to do that, or should we ban it?
Hello?
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the lines got mixed up. Some other guy was talking. I'm John. I don't know who the other guy was. But anyways, he was kind of right. He's right on everything he said. Clinton, they've all sold us out. We're in a war. We've been in a war of attrition, I think you call it. Economic arms race with Russia, China, all these countries, Iran, everything's been going on all these years. I can't believe we sell land to China. I can't believe we have farmland going to China. I can't, right next to military bases. After everything, I voted for Trump 3 times. 3 times I voted for him, every time. In fact, I wanted him before he ran because I thought he was a business guy and I thought he'd have a good sense. And he was pro-American, everything he ever talked about. He got along with blacks, Puerto Ricans, everybody. He was a good man for a president. And after what just happened this week, I gotta admit, I've argued with people at the fire department where I used to work, the most liberals of liberals, and I'm kind of disappointed that he's taking this route. Everything he said he was going to do regarding the Chinese is kind of like a false flag. I don't know what you want to call it. And just it's just wrong.
Well, I think, John, to be fair to Trump, and I disagree with him on these two issues, but I think, number one, he's in a pickle with the Iran war. Not that we can't win it. We can win it. Look, the blockade, we'll talk about Iran later this week, but there was a classified CIA assessment that was leaked to the Washington Post. And in a nutshell, here's what it said. The blockade is going to break Iran's back. There's no question. We have people on the ground who are saying it's causing massive disruption, high inflation, there's no goods, people are getting hungry, there's a lot of economic discontent. Like an anaconda, it's just breaking the ribs, breaking the spine of the Iranian economy. However, and I said this, a couple of weeks ago, blockades take time. They work. They're incredibly effective. But the one thing is, it's slow. It's not fast. It's slow. The CIA says it's going to take about 3 or 4 months. And then you're going to see the economy potentially collapse. Now, in other words, so it's working, but you're looking at about 3 or 4 months before the Iranian economy so collapses that the mullahs will have no choice but to make a deal. Well, 3 or 4 months takes us right to the brink of the midterms, which means oil will be high, gas will be high, inflation is going to continue to be high. It's surging now. Trump knows he's going to get killed if he doesn't end this war quickly. So he's in a pickle. He's winning, but he's not winning fast enough. So he needs China to try to close the deal with the Iranians and end this thing as quickly as he can. So that's why he's feeling, I got to give some concessions. Also, to be honest, he also wants to get this economy roaring again. And that's why he says, look, we got to open up the Chinese market. I want planes being built. I want factories expanding. I want our farmers to thrive. I want to make them dependent on our oil. Because I'm telling you, once they get American oil, they're not going to buy Iranian oil. Because there's always instability in that part of the world. So Trump is looking at a cost-benefit analysis. But I think what everybody's upset about is he's giving a lot to China. To be fair, he's giving a lot to China because he needs China now to end the war with Iran quickly. And that's the price the Chinese are demanding. But anyway, it is what it is. Look, if they help us out, okay, at least we get a real tangible benefit out of it. But if they string us along and lie to us, and that's my fear, because the Chinese leaders, especially these the CCP, communist Chinese leaders, are notorious liars, then I think we're getting played. Then, as I said, if they move their lips, they're lying. Then we've been taken to the cleaners. So we're going to have to wait and see. John, thank you so much for that call. I really appreciate it. Agree, disagree. Kathy in Danvers. Thanks for holding, Kathy, and welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, Kathy.
I'm probably the first one to say this, and it really disappoints me to do this, but the common denominator in all these negotiations, Venezuela, Iran, Strait of Hormuz, now China, has been Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth has been connected to Fox News and Paul Ryan for a long time. I really think he's a plant, and he's misinforming Trump, because Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she looked like the next president of the United States kicking the Chinese out of her state. What happened? We don't want them farming our land. We don't want them owning our biggest pork factories. Why are we giving in other than bad advice? And guess what? I'm seriously considering not even going to vote. I'm done with all of it.
617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, it's time for Talkback Tit for Tat. Your voices, your reactions, your heart. The true heartbeat of Kuhner country. We asked, you answered, and now we're sharing the best of this week's messages. Take it away, Jordan.
Hey, Jeff. By the way, your Chinese accent really sucks.
Jeff, what in God's name does one have to do to actually be charged with treason in this country? I mean, what is it that needs to be done? Because nobody's ever getting charged with treason, and there's so many cases of it, for God's sake.
Good morning, Jeff. I just wanted to correct you on something that you always say, and it makes me laugh, but it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Again, treating your audience like they're stupid. Oh, they speak Spanish in Venezuela. They speak Spanish in Cuba. No, Sherlock.
I find it amazing that your wife thinks she's an international lawyer and she gets more secure briefings than the Vice President of the United States. She irritates the hell out of me. But you're married to her, so ha ha.
Jeff, I just consulted ChatGTP. It says there's no evidence Fauci personally selected children for experiments. The misinformation has gotten everywhere.
Hey, Boston Bulldozer, I got a better term for you. Boston's Bunker Buster.
We're doomed. We're doomed. Chinese have infiltrated, just like you said. So, we're doomed. Doomed, doomed, doomed.
Oh, come on. It isn't that bad. I got to tell you, it's becoming very quickly one of our most favorite segments. Please keep them coming because honestly, they're hilarious. So, as you just heard, if you want to be part of the show, all you got to do, Kuhner's Talkback Tit for Tat, is go on the iHeartRadio app. And just, by the way, you can go into the upper right corner of the app and leave a message for me, for Sandy, for Mike. Just look for that red microphone, and that's all you do. Hit that red mic, and as you just heard, agree, disagree, respond, react, anything goes. You can even take a cheap shot at my wife, huh? So download the iHeart app, hit that red mic, and join Kuhner's Talkback Tit for Tat. Every single Monday, we're going to play it in the final segment. The best ones we put on the air. So be part of the show. Download the iHeart app, hit that red mic, and join Kuhner's Talkback Tit for Tat. Tommy in Brockton. Thanks for holding, Tommy, and welcome.
Yeah, Jeff, I think you summed it up a couple of calls ago that Trump right now, he's between a rock and a hard place with the situation with Iran. And, basically, he gave in to the demands of the communist Chinese of selling land with the hopes of, and the students, with the hopes of Iran leaning on with the hopes of Iran opening up the Straits of Hormuz. It was a big gamble of him getting involved with this war in the first place. And you know me, I'm 100% MAGA. And I also understand sometimes you have to be a pragmatist. It's not going to affect my vote. And I would tell Kuhner country one thing. There was a senator by the name of Cassidy in Louisiana who just got his ass handed to him in the primary. And there is a woman that ran on the Republican ticket to top the ticket. So and Donald Trump endorsed her. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. So do not get discouraged out there. And the lady that said that she's fed up with it, not going to vote, all I would say to her is that by you saying that, you are playing into the hands of progressive liberals that hate this nation. And you do not want the Democrats to take power in the House the Senate and the presidency, because you think this country is unrecognizable now. You just wait to see what's going to happen. And if you look at all of these different laws, especially gun laws throughout the country, and especially wealth laws, if let's just say you live in Foxborough, Massachusetts, my hometown, and you sell a house that's worth $800,000, which is not out of the question in that town, and you've got a 401k, and you've got some other assets, and you're worth, say, $1.5 million. Do you know that because of the millionaire's tax, it's going to hit you, a middle-class person? And the point is that the state of Massachusetts, very, very few people know about this, but when you sell your real estate and leave here, there's an exit tax. It's just like driving on the Mass Pike crossing the New York state line. One way or another, we're going to get you. And it's happened in 6 states so far, and there's a whole bunch of other states that are looking at the same thing because of the fact that these draconian, because you have too much stuff, too much wealth, that if you leave New York State, we want our pound of flesh. So all I have to say, I know my voice right now is being listened to throughout the country. You have got to vote in the primaries, and you have got to vote in November. If we don't, and the House flips blue, all we're going to hear is...
Oh, amen.